Hello, welcome to Business Success Talk, where we share the inspiring stories of today's top entrepreneurs. I'm Daniel Ortiz, and today my guest is Joseph Sisneros. He's the owner, founder of the Rancho Chimayo collection Galeria. Joseph, welcome to our program.
Thank you, Daniel. Appreciate you having me on the show. Hope we're doing what we can do from the last show, which is fantastic.
Okay, great. Glad to have you. And we're going to talk today about, number one, your Galeria, your collection, and what you're doing for the Mexico artists, but also entrepreneurs, but also share your journey as an entrepreneur. And it's a pretty interesting journey, as we've talked before. So, being an entrepreneur is not easy. It's not the easy path in life. Some people get a job, a job as we call it, and some people create jobs. So you're definitely one of the job creators. So before we get into your story and your business, tell us a little bit about Joseph and your Galeria and your collection. What do you do?
Well, I'm a native of Santa Fe, and my family goes to San Ildefonso Pueblo, and they go to Chimayo. And I started in the business I'm doing now when I was 12 years old in historic Santa Plaza. And I've continued to do it to this day.
Now, we say again, what is it that you do? What is it you have?
Well, I specialize in contemporary and historic Native American art. Okay. And my focus is mostly on pottery, going back centuries, and jewelry. And I work with some great, talented Native American artists from different pueblos in producing jewelry as well.
We have some photos we'll talk about in a minute. So tell me, why jewelry, why pottery? What got you started in this type of business? How did you get started, in other words?
Well, always been raised in, as we were talking about hustling and selling.
So you were a born entrepreneur is what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
Well,
yes.
That's interesting. Hold that thought, because one of the things I noticed working in my career as a business coach and financial advisor, and I worked with entrepreneurs, is entrepreneurs are born, not made. So most entrepreneurs had some kind of money-making gig when they were young, starting off. And do you have a memory of that? You shared one thing.
Yeah, there's probably the funniest memory which we shared was in front of my house when I was probably 5 years old. A buddy and I decided to sell dirt cheap. And we had this beautiful arroyo of red clay in the back, and we would pack it. And my mother still remembers this, that she was cracking up. But I don't know if we got any sales, but
you were selling dirt cheap.
Yeah, we tried to do what we could.
So the journey starts from there. Selling dirt cheap as a kid, and now the Rancho Chimayo collection. So I think we have some photos of your gallery. Now you have two galleries. One in the historic downtown Santa Fe Plaza, and the other, I guess, also historic in the Rancho Chimayo restaurant, right?
Right.
So tell us about this. What are we seeing here?
Well, this collection here is in the old corral up at the Rancho de Chimayo restaurant. And I started there when I was 12 years old, when my mentor, my godfather, Arturo Jaramillo, called me. And I was the happiest guy in the whole world just to be up at the restaurant. So I actually was working within the restaurant business itself, too. But this is the pottery collection that we have there. And
so this is in the gallery for sale?
Right.
Okay.
Right. Now, some of the pieces aren't, but most of them are. Mm-hmm. Or they've sold up or been sold already.
So you started off in the retail of selling pottery at a very young age then, that's what I'm hearing.
I started when I was 12 in Santa Plaza, right across from the Cathedral Basilica downtown, which is where my second location is now. Mm-hmm. And I was there, well, I started working there when I was 12 actually, as well as the restaurant business with my uncle and my aunt. But in 2011, I took a break from Santa Plaza. I was there from '94 till 2011, and I just had the opportunity and the call back to go again and open up another location in July of this year.
Okay, so at 12 years old, most kids are like, they're playing baseball, they're riding bikes, and you're selling pottery in downtown Santa Fe.
Well, we ironically was riding bikes while I was selling pottery in downtown Santa Fe.
Oh, yeah.
Because we would go chasing around the plaza and then come back, and so I would pretty much run the shop while my other friend was out there doing his thing, and it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun.
That's interesting you say that, because most entrepreneurs, and again, I make a distinction between an entrepreneur and a business owner. Entrepreneur starts businesses, business owner kind of just runs a business. Entrepreneurs, it's a different breed, right? It's a different mindset, but and a lot of people don't get entrepreneurs, and what they really don't get is that our work is fun, right? It's not really work to us a lot of the times, right?
Right. Well, yeah. The only time it gets a little bit iffy is if sales aren't happening, but we try to bring that back up. But other than that, I enjoy going to work every day.
Yeah, yeah. That's
I
great.
really do.
Okay. So I'm going to step back and tell us a little bit about your journey, because you talked about this before. You went through the 2008 recession, the Great Recession, impacted you dramatically, as it did a lot of entrepreneurs, and myself included. So, but I want to talk about your step back, and you grew up here locally in Santa Fe, New Mexico. You went to Santa Fe, College of Santa Fe, I believe. And then you heard a calling, right?
Right.
And you ended up in at the Vatican in Rome. So
Well,
tell us about that story.
Excuse me. Yeah, I ended up in Rome at the Angelicum University, which is St. Thomas Aquinas. It's a pontifical university.
Tell us of the journey, though, how you got from there to.
Well, I was at the College of Santa Fe, and I went to Europe on a trip with my folks, and went to all the holy sites. Went to the Holy Lands. And during that trip, I noticed that things were changing in the way I was seeing the world. I was seeing it differently. And I called like walking forward, but seeing it different. And I realized I was getting a calling to my faith and the truths of my faith. So I had made a decision at that point to go to Rome. And I was fortunate enough to be accepted into this international study program for men looking for their vocation. And they're from all over the country.
Well, you took a trip to Ohio, a school in Ohio?
That was in high school.
Oh, in high school.
I went to boarding school 1 year in Cincinnati, Ohio.
Okay. Was that part of the Catholic program?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that was a lot of fun, actually. But so I did that, and the second year I joined a community of men out of Quebec, Canada, called the Sons of Mary. And our vocation or our apostolate work was music, the liturgy of the church, kind of like the Benedictines. So there were 32 brothers, and all of them were so talented. They were ex-opera singers, ex-composers. I just happened to have a natural bass voice, and I started doing music when I was 11. And I was the only American accepted into the program. So I was there for a while.
This is Quebec, Canada.
In Quebec. So we go back from Quebec to Rome.
Okay.
You know.
Now in Rome, again, because we've talked about this, you had an interesting audience with somebody very famous. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I had a private audience with Mother Teresa, and her monastery was maybe about 50 yards down from our monastery, which was San Giovanni a Paolo, which is right above the Colosseum. And the funny thing was I was studying for finals, and all the lectures and classes were in Italian. So it was a tough go to begin with. But I didn't want to go because I wanted to study, and my grades were pretty good. And the guys, I call the guys, the brothers, said, "No, we got to go. We have a private audience." And so I said, "No, I can't." And he said,
Did you know it was with her?
Yeah, but I wasn't like not hearing it. I just had to study. And
you didn't realize at the time like this
no,
is.
I don't think I believed them.
Really?
So then they pretty much grabbed me off my chair and says, "We're going." And so we went down, and it's an amazing. Sangreano is the way she did it. You walk in, I think it was like almost an old Roman temple. And it was impoverished the way they did it. They had dirt on the floors because they lived, I think it's the Sisters of Charity, they live like with the poor. So we were in this little parlor, and I'll never forget when she walked in. She was very tiny, number one. And it was almost like the room just lit up. And it got warm. And it was the most beautiful thing I had ever, I've experienced it before a few times with others, but. And she just came down, and she was just friendly and like touching, to people.
She touches people,
like how are you? And she was cracking jokes, and so we were picking her brains about.
Did she speak English?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, she was speaking English, and she was. So we were asking her questions because our focus is kind of towards. I was in philosophy program, but it was kind of towards theology. And there were questions that had not been answered by theologians even today.
Like,
And
what's the meaning of life, or what was before the Big Bang, stuff like that?
yeah, well, like just certain things that Christ said that, there wasn't really a definitive answer. And what was the question that I asked, or we asked was, Christ said is as difficult for a rich person, I'm misquoting, to get into heaven as a camel going through the eye of a needle.
Yeah.
So what a needle is really a small doorway in the Middle East. Yeah, I remember forever I thought of a needle and thread, and I said, man, yeah, how's that going to happen? But and they can get through, but they have to get on their knees. What's that?
Did she give you an answer?
Well, yeah, she did. And what she said was, she says, it's more, she said it was more, how does she put it? It was more sinful for a poor man to curse God for being where he was than for a rich man to be generous with his gifts. And basically she just evened it out. She said it's, which was a great answer.
Right.
So everyone has a chance, in other words. It's just what we do with what we have and how we accept our.
So let's fast forward. So you went through that process, and obviously you made a different choice.
Right.
You came back and.
Yeah, so I came back. I transferred to New Mexico State. Didn't know what I was going to do, and I got into the music program and communications program. And at the time, all my credits transferred, which was amazing. So I was in voice class and so forth, and joining a band, and that was a lot of fun, and just went from there. And
all right. So how did you get started in what you're doing now, your current vocation?
Well, again, it started when I was 12, but I think a lot of it happened was, in growing up, I learned so much from my uncle Arturo, in terms of how he loved people and how he took time to greet his customers that came into the restaurant, because I was also working in the restaurant in summers and staying with him in Chimayo. So I really love the restaurant business too, because it's a people business. So what happened was, when I came back, I was at New Mexico State in the summer. I started working for another mentor of mine, Don Ortiz, who had a gallery in Santa Plaza. And of course, I could sell. So he put me on commission, and I started making money, and I liked what I was doing, and that's how I stayed with it. And then... and
you're how old at this time?
I was about 27.
Okay, so
27.
You said something that I think a lot of people heard but don't get. So you were on commission. You didn't have a salary, right?
It wasn't much.
It wasn't much.
It wasn't much.
And that's really the path. When I was starting my career in business as a stockbroker, I had no salary, it was commission only, and that scares the bejeebies out of a lot of people, right? Not having a salary, a guaranteed fixed salary, not to mention benefits and insurance and all that. And most people look for security in a job. We call it JOB. But the entrepreneur, the mindset, it's like, okay, I don't have the salary or very little salary, but I get a commission, which means my income is virtually unlimited.
Right.
And I can direct my income, right? And so was there any hesitation in getting that?
Well, it was interesting, because I was all in. They're saying, poker, I'm all in. I remember going up to him and say, I have a proposition for you. And he says, what? I said, me. And he knew me already, because I was also working.
So you sold him on first?
Yeah. And he says, you're hired.
Yeah.
And he said, this is what it is. I didn't really think about it.
So you sold your way into a job.
Right.
Essentially.
Yeah.
So I guess you can't say you can sell, right?
He knew I could sell, because when I was young, working in this shop at 12, 13, I was selling. But I remember going home and mentioning it to my mother and my father, and they didn't like that. They don't like the way the pay scale was.
They wanted the security and the job and the benefits, and of course that's a different mindset for the employees. So,
right.
So I want you to hold that thought. We're going to take a short minute break, talk and share with our sponsors, and we're going to take off back where you just left off. So
sounds good.
We'll be right back in a few minutes, and we hope you enjoy our sponsors. Welcome back to Business Success Talk. I'm Daniel Ortiz. Today my guest is Joseph Sisneros, who's the owner, founder of the Rancho Chimayo collection, Galerias. So Joseph,
you got it.
we left off, you were talking about in your 20s, you got back into the business, commission-only job. You actually sold your way into that job position, right? And so how do you go from there to starting your own gallery, or your own collection, rather?
Well, the thing, basically, at that, in around 1990, I had just recently got married, and I was still managing the gallery for Mr. Ortiz down in Santa Fe. And grace of God, I got a call from my cousin Laura and Chimayo at the restaurant saying that we have this spot open if you want to come up and help set up a store. And
now this is the Rancho Chimayo
at the
restaurant.
Yeah, the Rancho Chimayo restaurant.
Okay.
So I thought, that'd be interesting, so I'd be branching out on my own. And I thought about it, and I thought, yeah, I could do this. And then her and my aunt, Florence Jaramillo, said, why don't you just make it yours, which is even better. Of course, I was like, wow, okay, this is going to be really interesting, because now I'm going to leave something that was a sure in hand, and then go do something out of the fly. So I just made the commitment, and didn't have much money. I mean, essentially, I borrowed, I think, $6,000 from my dad, and had whatever I had, and with that, I was able to make it work.
So you had to buy inventory to sell?
Yeah, had to budget, see what I could get, and it just started working. And
okay, so you started selling, was it pottery or jewelry? Or
at first, it was jewelry just at the beginning.
Okay, so you had your own shop, so to speak?
Yeah, where it is now, still, if you walk into the restaurant, it's to the right.
Okay, so I think we have some pictures. So this is the same stop. Okay, that's your latest gallery.
This is at under the Portal at Santa Plaza, in the Santa Fe downtown location.
Okay, so you've branched out there. So that's the original.
Okay, now this is the entrance to the restaurant in Chimayo, which is beautiful. So I'm just there as before you go in. If you go in straight, you go straight into the entrance. You take a right. The jewelry showroom's on the right. The left, you start going into where the seating is, and then up to the top.
Okay, so you essentially have a room inside a restaurant.
And then we have a separate building on top, which was the corral, and that's where the pottery collection is.
Okay, so why pottery?
Well, because my family, my mother's side, are from San Ildefonso. My great-grandfather had the trading post in 1933, Massimo Herrera. And ironically, that's the collection in Chimayo.
That's in the Chimayo collection.
So my wife and I decided to give each other a gift and do Ancestry.com. And I always knew the history of my family. And sure enough, I'm 32% Native American, dated to 1750 in San Ildefonso, which was amazing. I knew I had something, but I didn't think I had that much. But I always had an affinity with the Native American art when I was in.
So this is just any pottery. This is Native American. Native
American, mostly the Southwest Native American art. Okay. Because that's what I knew. Hopi, Zuni, Zia, all the pueblos that produce pottery. Santa Ana, Sandia, San Ildefonso, of course, where Maria Martinez is from.
Tell us about this piece.
Okay, now this piece I don't have anymore, but this is one of the rare chocolate brown pieces, which I am fortunate enough to be part of its revival. This was made by Carmelita Dunlap. She passed away in 2000, and she was like a surrogate grandmother to me. She was the daughter of Maria Martinez's sister Juanita, and when her mother died in 1933, Maria raised Carmelita as her daughter. So she's the daughter they talk about. So one of only 3 apprentices ever taught by Maria directly.
So is this? I noticed there's like a
kiva step.
Caving in the middle.
Right, and that's kind of a coat of arms that her son.
Is that unique to her work only?
Well, the kiva step is not unique in general, but the way that one is, it is because her son and her were the first in history to come up with the chocolate brown tone through and through. It's never happened before, so it's a huge impact historically to the Pueblo and also to her family. And to this day, only she, her son Carlos, who passed away in 1981, her daughter Cynthia, Linda, and Shauna, granddaughter, are the only 5 to ever do it. And I was fortunate enough to represent her exclusively since 1994, and I'm the only one who has the chocolate brown to date.
Is that right? And that piece sold?
And very few have been made, yeah, that sold. She only produced 90 total chocolate pieces in her career.
Oh, wow.
Her son only did 60. He died at a young age. Her other daughters did maybe in the low hundreds. Linda, who's the only one really doing it more so is.
Okay, so is this part of their
Yes,
collection?
okay,
as
so
well?
the one on the left was a showpiece of Linda for Indian market. The one on the right is Linda, and the other one is Linda's. If you notice, they're all different colors. The reason why is because, and this is why they don't share this secret with anyone, not even the Pueblo. No one can see them produce the formula, the clay, or the firing. Each pot has its own unique formula that each potter had separate from each other. So when they would mix the volcanic ash and the clay, they would add whatever that secret ingredient is, knead it, pound it, get the air out, and then coil it, because these are hand coiled, there's no wheel. So they're considered inverse sculptures on an international level. So as they coil the shape, it would go to the trimester process where it would dry, shrink, and then they would have to sand it down, and they add a slip, and they have to burnish it with a rock, and that's how you get the shine. And that can take 20 hours, 30 hours, depending on the size of the pot. And then they go to the painting process, which is what Maria introduced in the early 1900s, the white paint. And they have to only can use yucca hair will work, and you cannot make a mistake. This is why they're masters. Once it goes into a fire, it changes to the color they have in mind with the ingredients they're adding. Where the black was horse manure was the final ingredient that was put over the fire when it was hot, prepared with cedar and cow dung, and that causes the reduction, and that's how they got to black. And that started in the 16th century. This is totally different. So there's only so many pieces ever made, and only so many colors ever produced.
So these, you said they're both deceased, so no one's taken over their craft.
Well, Carmelita passed away. Your son passed away in '81. Cynthia hasn't done any in a while that I know of.
Okay, so these pieces are actually more valuable now because
Yes.
they're just not being anymore made.
The pieces by Carmelita and Carlos are, to me, I don't know where they go, because there's nothing to compare to. They're the only ones that ever do it. So I look at it kind of like a rare colored historic diamond of flawless quality of certain shapes.
Right, and you still have pieces available?
I do. I have what we have left that hasn't been sold, but they usually go pretty. I mean, they can go in 2 years. They
So
can
do
go.
you have collectors now that buy from you?
Yeah.
And
And a lot of people just want to invest in something that's meaningful and historic and has history, and as opposed to going into a bronze or a.
Right.
Now, right now, I work with a lot of universities. Colleges will bring, certain professors will bring their students down, and I'll give a talk or a tutorial on the art. And one of the professors, I forget this college, I think it's in Missouri, was telling me when he was here in April that Linda's and Shauna's the work, the girls I have now, are being exhibited at the Smithsonian.
Is that right?
Yeah. We know that they're already, but they don't always pull up the pieces for the exhibit, so they're actually being shown now.
Okay. So let's switch gears a little bit and talk about your journey as an entrepreneur. You started off, because in Chimayo, that was your first.
That was my first job.
Your first business, really. Your first
Yeah.
job was actually selling,
Yeah.
and then with your first business, and then you went back to start the gallery, and then tell us what happened there.
You mean the current gallery, or
In Santa Plaza?
right at this time? Okay.
No, before.
Oh, okay. So, again, I had the gallery in 1994. Mr. Ortiz called me and asked me, "Would you want this location?" So I bought him.
Okay,
out.
so you went back. You bought the
gallery in 1994.
that you started off in, while having the other gallery in Chimayo.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
All right.
So it was crazy because when I started in Chimayo, it started very small, and then expanded. And then my aunt said the old gift shop, which is where the pottery gallery is now, is vacant. And I said, "Oh, can I have it?" And that's when I went into the pottery, and that's when I just made it a collection. And then in '94, Mr. Ortiz wanted to retire, and so I went down there. And then
So Mr. Ortiz, for our audience, was your original mentor and started you in the business.
In the Native American
He had
art,
a shop where you sold your way into the job.
Right. So, so now I'm expanding back down there, at the same time building a house that I designed, and it was just flying. I had like no time. And then I'm playing softball and playing bass. I started playing golf. I was just doing all the things you do. But it was fun. I was busy all the time, and everything was great. And I had my aunt Sandra, who was an actress in Hollywood for years, but she played a lot of Native American roles. And she pretty much ran the gallery because you can't run two by yourself.
Right.
Luckily,
Yeah, you can't be two places at once, right?
So, and then 2008 hit, and that was hard on everybody.
Well, 2000, the Great Recession, of course.
That was the hardest. We've gone through many recessions, but not like that. So,
well, and the whole Santa Fe, well, not just Santa Fe, but the whole art economy just kind of took a plunge because obviously when money's tight, people aren't spending money on art. That's one of the first things to go, right? I mean, it's a luxury item, and you got to eat, you got to pay your mortgage or your rent, whatever, and art just doesn't come into the picture. So you're at the very forefront of that, the whole economy. So what happened?
Well, so I always look at it like my business kind of like an ocean liner. When it's really, really good, everything's working. But as things started hitting, and I had all these different locations, it's like hit the Titanic hitting the iceberg. It's starting to go down. So I'm starting to have to throw things off, get rid of this, get rid of it, keep it afloat.
Right.
So after all of that, which is extremely difficult, I had to close the gallery in 2011 in Santa Fe, which I'd been for years and years, and kind of start all over. And it was kind of a good thing because I simplified my life. I kind of took, it was just me and Chimayo. I had my 1 or 2 part-time employees and just made it work. And I think I got more reconnected in a sense, kind of back to the basics.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that. Again, talk about the entrepreneur journey and entrepreneur mindset. As an entrepreneur, we're going to have tough times. I mean, virtually, we see all these entrepreneurs, these icons on, Gates and the founder of Facebook, Zuckerberg, and people think, oh, what a great story. But people don't realize that they went through hard times, and even Apple founder, he went through some tough times, and even right now, Elon Musk.
Just like a Shark Tank, all of those people have done.
Yeah, I mean, and they say in business school, the good ones, if you're learning entrepreneurship, is that they don't say don't fail. They say you're going to fail. So fail early and fail forward. But also, going through the process myself, my own business, is you really learn a lot. When you're going through it, it's not fun, and you're not happy. But it's only in hindsight that you learn wisdom, right? Something positive comes out of that. And you said one of the things that taught you was to simplify your life, because you said before, just before that you were busy and you were. So tell us, what did you learn from that process as an entrepreneur?
Well, and I do this a lot. I have to recalibrate, even because there's times you go through burnout. I have, and almost every year I would go through a burnout for a period of time, like a week or 2 weeks, sometimes longer, or a funk. And you have to grind through it. And it's good to recalibrate and go back. Well, how did I get started at the beginning? What did I love about what I'm doing?
Exactly.
What did I love about it?
Right.
And I realized what I love about what I do, whether I go through burnout and have to recalibrate, is I think about how the principles I learned from my uncle, about the love of people and the passion, and making people happy. That's the number one thing. And happiness comes back to you if you give to them. When I haven't done that, it's almost embarrassing in myself, because I have to look at myself and I go, what are you doing?
Yeah. Okay.
You have to do that.
That's a great way to close this interview, and it is about the passion at the end of the day. As entrepreneurs, we're passionate, and I always remind myself when I go through these funks, and we all do, is like, well, worst case scenario, I'll get a job, and that's like immediate motivation. Like, no, that would be the worst thing to do. So, well, Joseph, we got about 20 seconds left. What advice would you give to any entrepreneur who wants to start their own business?
Don't be afraid. And no doesn't mean no. No means yes. You just have to work through your principles of what and why you're there to begin with.
Know your why.
You got to know what your why.
Okay.
And then always stay to that. Stay to your guns. And if people criticize you, don't listen to what they have to say, but don't necessarily take it to heart.
Right.
Take the bits and pieces out and apply it.
Great. Well, Joseph, thank you for sharing your story, and we invite our audience to visit you at Rancho de Chimayo in historic, beautiful Chimayo and downtown Santa Fe and Santa
thank you.
Plaza. I want to thank our audience for joining us on this session of Business Success Talk.